Good evening. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID-19, some commissioner, staff, and public are attending remotely via Zoom, by phone or on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. This is a critical element given the number of remote participants and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Due to COVID-19 requirements, the public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of the meeting. The public also have an opportunity to provide brief comments from the lobby of the municipal office building here at 701 North 7th Street in Kansas City, Kansas. I'm going to call this meeting to order and ask our clerk for the roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor Garner. Roll call: Stites.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Burrough.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Ramirez.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Kane.
Here.
Markley. Garner.
Here. Thank you. The invocation is going to be given by Commissioner Harold Johnson of Faith Deliverance Church of God in Christ, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pray. O Lord our God, how excellent is your name in all the earth. This evening we welcome your presence, your wisdom, and your direction. We pray that we accomplish all that has been set before us tonight with the common goal of doing what is best for this city and this county that we are blessed to call home. Grant that, I pray, Lord, that Mayor Garner and every commissioner have ears to listen to the citizens we serve. Give us wisdom to act in the name of justice for all Wyandotte Countyans. Bless us all with your graces and allow all that we do be for your glory. These things we pray in the name of Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson, for providing the invocation this evening. I'll ask the clerk if there are any revisions on tonight's agenda.
Mayor, yes, we had one change. It was the blue sheet issued for the planning and zoning consent agenda. It was special use permit number 2021-047, which was modified to include documents submitted by the Wyandotte County Conservation District. That includes all the changes on tonight's blue sheet, Mayor Garner.
Thank you. Tonight, we have two distinct parts to our meeting. The planning and zoning portion will be handled first, followed by the regular commission meeting. I'll ask the clerk to read the statement required by state law governing the planning and zoning portion of our meeting, followed by the item on the planning and zoning consent agenda.
Thank you again, Mayor. Good evening. We would like to welcome all present to this meeting of the Unified Government Commission. Members of the commission are Mayor, CEO Tyrone Garner, Commissioner Melissa Bynum, at-large District 1, Commissioner Tom Burrough, at-large District 2, Commissioner Gayle Townsend, District 1, Commissioner Brian McKiernan, District 2, Commissioner Christian Ramirez, District 3, Commissioner Harold Johnson, District 4, Commissioner Mike Kane, District 5, Commissioner Angela Markley, District 6, Commissioner Chuck Stites, District 7, and Commissioner Andrew Davis, District 8. As each petition is called, all persons for or against will be given the opportunity to express their views. If this is the first time that a particular petition has been before the commission has three options. Option 1, it can approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission with 6 votes. 2, it can override the Planning Commission's recommendation, but it would take 8 votes to override. 3, it can return the matter to the Planning Commission for further consideration together with a statement specifying the reasons for the referral back to the Planning Commission. The consent agenda is the first part of the planning and zoning agenda. Items on the consent agenda have received a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission. Unless there is a request to set aside an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the public, Unified Government Commission, or others, then the Planning Commission's recommendation on all of the items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Unified Government Commission at one time. I will read the list of the agenda items on the consent agenda, and I will And when I have completed the list, the mayor will ask if there are any requests to set aside items from the consent agenda. This is your time to stand up and request that an item be set aside if you do not agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation. If you contacted the UG clerk's office, that item will be set aside by the UG clerk on your behalf. If an item is set aside, the matter will be discussed and voted on separately. All items not set aside will be approved with the Planning Commission's recommendation. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of each petition. We would, however, remind you that there are a number of items on the agenda, and we would appreciate your efforts to make your remarks as concise as possible. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please mute them or turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. Once the petitioners make their presentation, anyone for or against will be allowed the maximum 3 minutes to state their views. This is your time to raise your hand. When your name is called, please state your name and city for the record. The mayor and commission are required to disclose contacts with proponents or opponents on any item of the planning and zoning agenda. At this time, does any member of the commission wish to disclose any contact with proponents or opponents on any item of the agenda?
Do any commissioners have disclosures?
None.
Seeing none,
Commissioner Bynum has her hand up.
sorry.
Commissioner Bynum.
Commissioner Bynum?
Commissioner Bynum, I'm sorry.
Melissa Bynum at Large District 1. I had correspondence regarding item A1, change of zone 2021-047.
Commissioner Burrows?
Thank you, Mayor. I have had supporters and opponents to MPL 2021-025.
Commissioner Stites?
The only thing that I would like to ask is that when we get a free minute, that we say the Pledge of Allegiance.
We recited the Pledge of Allegiance, Commissioner, at the onset.
Okay, I didn't get that. Thank you. Sorry.
I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Planning and zoning consent agenda, change of zone applications. COZ 2021-047 Michael Macris with BHC Roads. Change of zone from R1 Single Family C1 Limited Business to CP1 Plan Limited Business Districts to RP4 Plan Garden Apartment District for Tower View Homes at 2416A South 55th Street, 511 Gibbs Road, and 5125 Gibbs Road, recommended for approval. 2, COZ 2021-053 John Cawthon. Change of zone from R1 Single Family District to AG Agricultural District for agricultural purposes at 3817 Luss Drive, recommended for approval. Special use permit applications. Item 1, SP 2021-047 Albert H. Walker. Special use permit to keep livestock at 3633, 3703, and 3707 Bell Crossing, 3701, 3702, and 3706 North 37th Street, and 3655 Sorter Drive, recommended for denial. SP 2021-077 Natalie McNutt. Special use permit for a short-term rental at 3801 Lloyd Street, recommended for approval for 1 year. SP 2021-080 Ryan Stoops with Jamestown Properties LLC. Special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 3151 West 45th Avenue, recommended for approval for 1 year. SP 2021-083 Aurelio and Maria Navarez. Renewal of a special use permit for live entertainment in conjunction with a drinking establishment at 6550 Call Drive, recommended for approval for 10 years. SP 2021-085 Paul Ridgway. Renewal of a home occupation special use permit for a personal trainer business at 419 Armstrong Avenue, recommended for approval for 2 years. SP 2021-086 Beverly and Frederick Avery with Avery's Village. Renewal of a special use permit for a youth residential facility at 6261 Leavenworth Road, recommended for approval for 5 years. Master Plan Amendment applications, MPL 2021-025, Michael Macris with BHC Roads. Master Plan Amendment from community commercial and low density residential to medium density residential at 2416 and 2416A South 51st Street, 5115 Gibbs Road, and 5125 Gibbs Road, recommended for approval. Miscellaneous ordinances. 1, an ordinance rezoning property of 4108 Adams Street from R1B Single Family District to R2B Two Family District, recommended for approval. An ordinance authorizing a special use permit for a short-term rental at 4108 Adams Street, recommended for approval. An ordinance rezoning property at 4318 Sorter Drive from R1B, Single Family District to AG Agricultural, recommended for approval. An ordinance rezoning property at 731 Tenney Avenue from R1B, Single Family District to R2B, Two Family District, recommended for approval. An ordinance rezoning property at 3740 North 35th Street from R1B, Single Family District to AG Agricultural District, recommended for approval. An ordinance rezoning property at 2000 South 49th Street from R1, Single Family District to AG Agricultural District, recommended for approval. An ordinance authorizing a special use permit for a group home program with gardens and greenhouses for training and office and gardening space for New Roots program at 2601 Ridge Avenue, recommended for approval. An ordinance rezoning property at 7512 Leavenworth Road from C1 Limited Business District to CP3 Planned Commercial District, recommended for approval. An ordinance authorizing a special use permit for a used automotive dealership with light repair and maintenance at 7512 Leavenworth Road, recommended for approval. And an ordinance authorizing a special use permit for short-term rental at 749 Locust Street, recommended for approval. That represents all of the items on tonight's planning and zoning consent agenda, Mayor.
Thank you. Does any member of the commission, the county administrator, or public wish to set aside any items on the planning and zoning consent agenda? If an item is
Commissioner
not-
Mike Kane, move for approval.
Okay,
Stites, second.
thank you, Commissioner Kane and Commissioner Stites. If an item is not set aside, all items on the planning and zoning consent agenda will be voted on by one vote to follow the recommendation of the planning commission. I just need clarity from the clerk. Item number 4, SP 2021-083. Has that been set aside?
It has not. No one requested to set it aside.
I'm requesting it to be set aside, please.
Okay.
Move for approval, Kane, for all the remaining items.
Stites, second.
Okay, I'll ask the clerk if he received any requests from the public to set aside an item.
None were received.
I'll ask the clerk if anyone joining virtually has their hands raised to set aside an item.
Seeing none, but we need to vote, Mayor.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor.
Yes. Roll call.
Go ahead with the roll call.
Roll call. Stites,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Vote is 9-0. The motion carries.
Thank you. I'll ask the clerk to provide the set aside number.
Thank you, Mayor. Set aside number SP 2021-083, Aurelia and Maria Navarez.
I'll ask staff to make some opening remarks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. This application is for a special use permit for live entertainment and a drinking establishment, again, at 6550 Cod Drive. This is in the Riverview area of the county. This would be the applicant's 5th approval. This is their 4th request for renewal. You can see the site a little bit closer off of Cod Drive right here. And as I go through these pictures, I'll just add a couple of issues. In our review, since their last approval 5 years ago, we did note multiple police calls at the location. We've received thus far no letters of support nor opposition. Some of the conditions of approval that staff had requested as a part of these, as a part of this renewal, is to develop a trash enclosure for their trash bin, to repair some of the and restripe the parking lot. We did notice that there were a lot of floodlights on the building, which is in violation of our code of ordinances. So we asked for downward lighting. There's also several unpermitted signs attached to the old building. It's typical of bars and live entertainment venues of this kind. So we asked that those be removed accordingly. We do have a couple of conditions of approval as a sort of standardized ones that we have for these types of uses related to security. but no security plan was provided specifically for this use. Staff agrees with staff agrees with the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval for 10 years.
Thank you. I'll ask the applicant or representative to present their application. If you're present, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, this is Maria Nevarez, and we are the owners of the said establishment.
You can proceed with your statement.
Well, we've agreed to all the conditions that they have said about the enclosure for the garbage and also the paving, except that right now at this particular time, because of the weather, it's really difficult to get out there and but we have no objection to repairing what has to be repaired.
Thank you. Does that conclude your statement? Okay. I will now open the public hearing and ask the clerk if he's received any direct notification from the public who wish to express their comments in favor of this item.
We have
Once
not, Mayor.
acknowledged, you may state your name and address for the record. You will be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments.
My apologies, Mayor. We have not received any comments.
Okay. Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in favor of SB 2021-083? If so, please raise your hand to be acknowledged. Once acknowledged, you may state your name and address for record. You will be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments.
We're seeing none, Mayor.
Is there anyone joining us in the lobby who would like to speak in favor of SB 2021-083? If so, please raise your hand to be acknowledged. Once acknowledged, you may state your name and address for the record. You will be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments.
Seeing none as well, Mayor.
I ask the clerk if you receive any direct notifications from the public who wish to express their comments in opposition of SB 2021-083. Once acknowledged, you may state your name and address for record. You'll be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments.
We have not received any, Mayor.
Is there anyone joining us virtually who would like to speak in opposition of SB 2021-083? If so, please raise your hand to be acknowledged. Once acknowledged, you may state your name and address for the record. You'll be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments.
We're seeing none, Mayor.
Is there anyone joining us in the lobby who would like to speak in opposition of SB 2021-083? If so, please raise your hand to be acknowledged. Once acknowledged, you may state your name and address for the record. You'll be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments.
Seeing none as well, Mayor.
Okay, I will close the public hearing. Would the petitioner like to make any closing comments? Seeing none, do any members of the commission have any questions or comments? I would like to recommend that we reduce, based on the issues that have been identified by staff, the amount of years from 10 to what was noted. Can staff inform the commission on the prior special use permit approvals in terms of years?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. The previous approval was for 5 years.
I recommend that we go back to that, as well as revisit this to ensure that a security plan is put in place for the safety of not only those that may be attending that venue, but also those that may be impacted from any potential occurrences that may arise in regards to that venue being at that location and providing that level of entertainment. I'll entertain a
Burrough,
motion.
that large second.
Mayor, Chief Legal has a question.
I'm sorry. Chief Legal Counsel?
Misty Brown, Chief Counsel for the Unified Government. Mayor, I just want to clarify your recommendation. Are you recommending that at this point we vote to reduce the approval from 10 years to 5? Or are you also recommending that we send it back to the planning commission to look at a security measure, or is that something you wanted to evaluate at the next 5-year mark?
It's a combination of both. I'd like it to be sent back with the recommendation for a security plan and a second look at reducing the approval special use permit usage from 10 years back down to 5 years.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So the motion is to send it back to planning commission for additional review.
That is correct. And I'll entertain a motion.
Commissioner Mike Kane, motion.
Represented Commissioner Burrough, second at large.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Roll call.
Seeing none, roll call.
Roll call. Stites,
Aye.
Davis,
Before I vote, Commissioner Townsend had her hand up.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Townsend, before we proceed with the roll call, we'll roll that back. Commissioner Townsend, you had a comment?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Davis. I removed it because I was going to clarify a point of order, but Commissioner Kane's motion took care of that. And with the second by Commissioner Burrows, the question I was going to raise is no longer necessary. Thank you both.
Thank you,
All right,
Commissioner Townsend and Commissioner Davis.
Commissioner Davis, District 8, aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. Are there any other set aside numbers that the clerk has available for us?
We have none, Mayor.
That will close the public hearing and into the planning and zoning agenda. That takes us to the mayor's agenda. We will now move the regular meeting to the portion to that agenda. Item number 1, COVID-19 mask and mandate recommendations. I'll turn it over to Alan House to make comments in that regard.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Alan House, Assistant County Administrator. And for the update this evening, we have with us Elizabeth Gronway, the Chief Epidemiologist for the Health Department, Dr. Alan Greiner, the Chief Medical Officer, and Dr. Aaron Corvo, the Deputy Medical Officer, who will be providing this evening's update. Elizabeth?
Hello. Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth. I'm the Chief Epidemiologist, and I'm going to be starting our presentation off with a brief update on the current COVID situation in Wyandotte County. There we go. So this first graph here shows our 7-day rolling average for the average number of new COVID cases in Wyandotte County. And you can see on the far left of the graph that starting towards the end of December, we saw a very large spike in the number of COVID cases per day. And we did hit a peak on January 11th of an average of 675 new cases, which is quite a lot. It's the largest COVID surge that we've seen thus far in the pandemic. Fortunately, we did hit that peak and cases are starting to come down. So right now, the 7-day rolling average is 340 new cases, but it's really important to recognize that 340 cases per day is still a tremendous amount of COVID in Wyandotte County. That's still higher than the average case rate has been throughout this pandemic up until this most recent surge. So it's important to recognize that even though we are trending down right now, that case numbers are still very high. This next slide shows the 7-day rolling average for the percent positivity, so the percent of tests that are coming back positive. And again, you see a similar trend. We did peak on January 11th at our percent positivity at about 35%, which is very high and the highest we'd ever seen it. And that is starting to come down. It's at 28% now. But again, it's important to recognize that 28% is still a very high percent positivity. The CDC classifies anything above 10% as high community transmission or the red zone. So we're still a long way off from being below 10%, which is really what the goal is. These next two graphs show hospitalizations. So this first graph here shows hospitalizations for the hospitals in Wyandotte County. You can see again that we've really hit quite a high peak with hospitalizations. And the important thing to know about hospitalization data is that it does lag a bit behind those case numbers. So we are seeing a decrease in the case numbers, but it takes time for hospitalizations to peak and then come down because, you know, it might take a couple weeks before someone with COVID needs to be hospitalized. And then again, a very similar trend across the whole MARC region, all the hospitals within the metro area, seeing the highest hospitalization numbers that they've seen thus far in the pandemic. So I just wanted to take a minute to talk about the hospital situation. You've probably seen it in the news, or if you follow KU on social media at all, they've talked about this, but the hospitals are truly in a crisis situation right now. Hospitalizations are the highest they've ever been throughout the pandemic, and the hospitals are battling a lot of other issues as well, including short staffing, burnout of their staff who have worked tirelessly throughout this pandemic, shortages on a lot of medications and supplies, including the medications that we would use to treat COVID that we have right now, but are just in very short supply. So I just wanted to take a minute to talk about how serious this is in terms of how it impacts our community. You know, right now, hospitals are canceling primary care visits or rescheduling them. People aren't getting their cancer screenings, things like that that are really essential for our community that aren't happening because the hospitals are so overwhelmed. Unfortunately, people that are going to the ER have very, very long wait times, and it's not uncommon for people to wait 1, 2, 3 days down in the ER waiting for a bed to open up on the floor for them. And I wanted to share a quick story that recently occurred in our community as well, because I think it really highlights how serious the hospital situation is. There was a resident who had a heart attack. EMS transported this person to Hospital A, but Hospital A was on diversion, meaning that they're not accepting incoming patients. So they redirected EMS to take this patient to Hospital B. Unfortunately, the patient died en route from Hospital A to Hospital B, possibly because they did not have the access to emergency medical care that they needed because the hospitals are so overwhelmed right now. And then finally, I wanted to talk about the impact that COVID's had in our community in terms of deaths. So since the beginning of the pandemic, we have lost 446 Wyandotte County residents due to COVID. We've had 20 deaths so far in December 2021 and 30 deaths thus far in January of 2022, and we're not even through the month of January yet. So we're averaging about a death per day right now in Wyandotte County due to COVID. And another thing I really wanted to highlight is there's this misconception perhaps that the people that are dying of COVID are elderly and frail. But the truth is that the average age of death for the month of January in Wyandotte County is 64 years old. So that means approximately half the deaths that we've had in January thus far are people that are 64 years of age or younger. And that impacts Wyandotte County as a whole as well, you know, in terms of our community and the impact it has on families and jobs and things like that. So I did want to highlight that the average age of death is 64 years old for January. I'm going to turn the presentation over now to Dr. Greiner, and we're going to touch a bit on vaccination rates.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. We've talked about this before. We know vaccination is very powerful at reducing bad outcomes, and we're seeing that. We're still, you know, of course, we are seeing some bad outcomes even in the rare person that's vaccinated, but by and large, the majority of folks getting hospitalized and having bad outcomes are unvaccinated. You know, you could see that vaccination in this country has prevented a whole lot of deaths and a whole lot of hospitalizations, and with the hospitalizations being 16 times higher for those who are unvaccinated. And those who are unvaccinated have that 68 times higher risk of dying compared to those who are not. Next slide. just a graph that really shows the same thing. The rate of those who get hospitalized is really, really significantly higher than those who are vaccinated. Next slide. And the rates of deaths in the unvaccinated are much higher than those who are either fully vaccinated or fully boosted. Now, we'll talk in a minute about how low the rate of booster shot administration is in our county, and I think we also want to talk about how we've really got a good news, bad news scenario tonight, right? We are seeing the peak of this Omicron variant. Things are getting better. We're not out of the woods, but we've got to start looking forward and finding ways to live as a community and thrive as a community with this in our midst. But we've also got the bad news of this kind of statistic and the hospital data. I think we really want to start positioning this as a future focused long-term gain. And most of that long-term work needs to be about vaccination efforts for months and years going forward. And we also know at the health department, as we do our other services, whether that's doing environmental health services, women, infants, and children's services, women's health, other women's health services, other infectious disease services, we're going to weave this in because the vaccination campaign is going to be an ongoing effort and probably sort of an ongoing booster campaign. Okay, next slide. This will be my last one. So, our rates are not what we want them to be. We have worked really, really hard. I think many of you have been involved in that work. And in some ways, I think, honestly, we may have done better than would have been expected given the long-term health outcomes in this county, but we don't have things where we want them to be. For completed series, again, we've still not even reached 50%, and for booster dose, we have not even reached 20%, and there's many reasons for this, right? We're not wanting to blame people who haven't gotten vaccinated, especially kids, for example, the 5 to 12-year-olds. Their parents are responsible for them getting vaccinated. So we don't want to blame these people or shame these people. We want a long-term, forward-thinking, positive approach to the future way of trying to convince people to change their mind and not giving up. So I think the next slide is Dr. Corbo, and I think she's going to finish us out. So I'll turn it over to her and we'll finish out.
Thank you, Dr. Greiner. Good evening, everybody. Just want to also highlight, the rates of vaccination by various age groups. Unfortunately, we're seeing our younger kids, 5 to 11-year-olds, and then also young adults and 25 to 34 years of age as being our categories of lowest vaccine rates. We're trying to combat this by having vaccination events and workplaces. And so we're working, really hard to increase these numbers. I kind of think of this as, the parents of that are not getting vaccinated and the children of those people. And so we worry about those two age groups, especially because we've seen now in the pandemic and earlier in the pandemic that the young people are actually oftentimes driving the number of cases. So they're often the ones who unfortunately are then getting infected and spreading the disease because of course they're out and about, they're working and living their lives. Next slide. Just want to show our county here, and we can see where we have really higher rates of vaccination and where there are lesser rates. So we can see there, we've got our work cut out for us there in the Edwardsville area. We're certainly working hard with our community partners there and in 104, 102, and 106. That's where we're going to be concentrating a lot of our efforts upcoming in the next weeks and months. And so I just want to highlight our awesome partnerships with our FQHCs and other community-based organizations, and of course our Health Equity Task Force and our pastors who are helping us to get the word out and have community-based events. Next slide. So again, as Dr. Greiner mentioned, we really are thinking about this and needing to think about this as a community in the long term and as a long game. COVID is still a big deal It's still a pandemic. It's still a massive situation in our community that seems really on fire, especially in the hospitals right now. This has been a really devastating time for a lot of folks. It's upended, schools with school closures. We've had businesses that have been short-staffed. Clearly, we've been quite overwhelmed in the hospitals, as Elizabeth mentioned. Certainly, I can attest to that as somebody who is a primary care physician and also works in KU Hospital and in the emergency department there as well. What's going to be key to moving us forward and understanding that we're going to be living with COVID, although probably having times of incredible surge, is, again, we've got to increase our vaccination rates. That is going to be the key. And so that we see fewer and fewer people who are getting really, really ill and dying from this disease. We're going to work really hard to improve availability of these treatments. Once we can increase that supply of the monoclonal antibodies and the antiviral treatments, we're going to be really working hard to get those out to our residents of Wyandotte County when needed. And also, we're going to work hard to be nimble. We're going to see more variants. I guarantee it. We're going to have to be responsive to those new variants. We're going to have to be ready to increase our testing, to get out in the community. We're going to have to be ready to put our masks on when we go out so we don't spread this to others, so that we break the chain of that transmission. Next slide, please. This is my last slide. We want to follow up with some recommendations. Let's get back to the basics. When we don't have all of the things that we need, which is everybody to get a vaccination and to get boosted, when we don't have all of the medicines that we need, it's easy to cut the chain of transmission when we get back to the basics and we all wear masks when we're indoors and in public. It just works, and it's important because Omicron and upcoming variants, I would surmise, are going to be extremely transmissible. We're hoping that all of you will up your game, so to speak, in terms of what type of mask you wear. So we're looking at like KN95 masks, and certainly paper masks are better than cloth. And so a lot of what we've done in the health department in the last couple of weeks, along with our community-based partners, are to get out over 320,000 KN95 masks to community organizations and to residents. So we're really, really big believers in this because we know, again, it breaks that chain of transmission. What if we save a life? That's awesome. What if you save somebody from having to stay home from school? And so our kids can learn better. It's important stuff. Get vaccinated and get boosted. We know that if you don't get boosted, you're really more susceptible to Omicron and upcoming variants. So it's really, really important to get that 16% of our county that has booster shots. We got to get that way up there. We're going to enter a time here where a lot of people have been sick. We've got a lot of natural immunity in our community. But you know what? It doesn't last as long as these vaccinations. So we all really need to do our part. We're going to continue to improve access to testing. Free testing's out there for every community member. Come down to the old Kmart site at 78th and State or to the Armory, and we're there for you. Again, we're going to work really hard to remain in partnership with community entities, with our churches and with others to remain responsive and nimble to the needs of the community and whatever this pandemic continues to throw at us. And with that, I'm going to finish up and I will pitch it back to Alan Howes, I believe. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Corvo, Dr. Greiner, Elizabeth. Mayor, that's the update from the health department and the medical officers. If there are any questions from the commission.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Alan, Elizabeth, Dr. Corvo, Dr. Greiner, and to Julianne and all of our healthcare workers. I thank you for everything you have done and continue to do. I highly, highly, highly suggest, not even suggest, the highest recommendation possible for everyone to wear a mask. I have had 2 nephews, 1 niece, 1 sister, 1 brother-in-law, and their youngest son get COVID. And my sister is pregnant. Now she has to have additional monitoring for her baby. This is affecting lives. There's 446 people dead. That is mothers, daughters, brothers, cousins, grandfathers and grandmothers, grandfathers. This isn't a video game. Those people won't come out of it when pandemic is over. So I highly, highly encourage, recommend to the highest degree for you to get vaccinated and to wear your mask, because only then will we get through this. This isn't a me, myself, and I. This is a we. That is the only way we'll get out of here. To the healthcare workers, thank you for everything you do. You are Atlas right now. We have put the world on your shoulders to save us, but yet we refuse to do our part to help you. So I cannot thank you enough for all that you have done, that you will do. You are on the front lines. We are not. You see everything that happens. We have had, as what our health department just told us, a death because of our overrun hospitals. At the school I work, we're running out of subs, teachers, students. We've had to quarantine whole classes. It's not over. We're still in a pandemic. Again, this is not a me, myself, and I situation. It is a we situation. We have to do our part as a community, moving together. Thank you.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Townsend, District 1. I agree and applaud everything that Commissioner Ramirez just offered so passionately and correctly. Thank you again to our healthcare professionals who are here with us tonight, and the hundreds of others who aren't here, who are on the battlefield in the hospital and other medical facilities. I just had 2 questions. Ms. Grunwig talked about the average age of the people who were deceased and the thinking that this is an old people's disease. Is there any data, and maybe it was on one of the slides you showed, of what the average age is of those individuals who are hospitalized here with COVID? I'm just curious as to what that average age is for those who have been hospitalized with it. Do you have anything on that? I thought there might have been one slide, but it came and went so quickly I couldn't.
We don't have that data at the county level. I don't know if one of the doctors might have it specifically for KU. If not, it's just not data I have readily available right now.
Okay.
Commissioner Townsend, I can add that in a KU hospital, certainly the age has decreased over the course of the pandemic. You know, initially, when we were first talking about COVID now a couple of years ago, you know, age of folks in the hospital, and of course those who unfortunately were succumbing to the disease, was quite elderly, and over time that has just that age has come down quite a bit. So we're seeing a lot of people even in their 30s, 40s, and 50s in KU, and I know that the data would bear out from KU Hospital that would show a younger age there as well. Thanks for that question.
Okay, thank you. And that gives a good comparison, because I did jot down very quickly from one of the slides that it seemed to be the group that had was vaxxed. The largest group was at 65 to 74-year-old age range. So I was just wondering how that compared to what you're seeing in the hospitals, those who unfortunately had to be hospitalized with COVID. One last thing, and this might be kind of far-reaching, haven't heard it on the news. It's amazing that we are now a year from the time when a lot of the vaccines were first widely distributed in Wyandotte County. Have you heard from the medical insiders that there may be something else required in the way of dosage beyond the booster? Like, you know, we have to get a flu shot. It's recommended we get a flu shot every year. Is there any medical evidence being talked about or discussed that we may have to start all over again with a cycle of the shots from the beginning?
It's a important question. I don't think that we have direction currently on that. I can tell you that in Israel, they've started on their fourth dose of the vaccination. And so they've been helpful, I think, as a nation to look toward and to see their data before we implement. I do know that the vaccine manufacturers currently are creating vaccinations to match the variants that are coming up, specifically the Omicron. I predict that we will need boosters going forward, and I am not sure at this time as to how often that will be necessary, but I do think that what you're talking about will likely occur. I did want to get back to your previous question and just quickly say that the average age of hospitalized patients is 56, I believe, at KU Hospital. So I appreciate that question again. Thanks.
Oh, thank you for that follow-up. Again, thank you all for your hard work and continued diligence in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. House, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, Mayor, it does. And just a reminder for folks listening that there's a lot of data and information on testing and vaccines, and as well as the latest data on COVID rates and a lot of the information you saw this evening on the website, mykokck.org. There's a COVID hub and a vaccine hub as well that are available from there with lots of data. So it's another good resource for people who want to dig deeper into the data on this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That takes us to the second item on the mayor's agenda, appointments, mayor special committee appointments. Clerk, if you could please read those.
Thank you, Mayor. Committee number one is the Mayor's Committee on Neighbors in Need of Unhoused and Residents. Commissioner Andrew Davis will chair. The goal of the Neighbors in Need of Unhoused Residents Committee is to establish minimum standards for wraparound community-based services that address local housing costs, rising homelessness, warming stations and shelters, food insecurity, and substandard housing. This committee will also address emergent needs and focus their efforts on moving our unhoused populations to housing and the impoverished population to a sustainable level of prosperity. Committee two is the Mayor's Committee on Community Safety and Justice, which will be chaired by Commissioner Christian Ramirez. Following an in-depth exploration of 21st century community reform models, the goal of this committee should be to reimagine and reconstruct where necessary our public safety system and build collaboration with our community stakeholders to address relevant community needs and/or challenges. Recommendations must also be made to reprioritize public spending to be in alignment with established goals and strategies. Number three, the Mayor's Committee on Arts, Culture, and Equitable Development, chaired by Commissioner Angela Markley. The goal of this committee is to mobilize the local arts and culture and to work to advance the steering of public resources to embed these values into the transformation of neighborhoods using collaborative agreements that target economic and community development initiatives, creating placemaking models, and the use of arts and culture to support equitable policy change across the county. Number four, Mayor's Special Unified Government Charter Reform Committee, UG Commissioners only. Commissioner Tom Burrough, Chairman. The Charter Reform Committee is comprised solely of UG Commissioners for the purpose of conducting a comprehensive review and study of the existing foundational document, the Unified Government Wyandotte County and Kansas City, Kansas Charter Ordinance. This committee will seek out amendments or revisions that are designed to increase efficiency, effectiveness, shared governance that have a profound impact for all residents and stakeholders. Committee 5, Mayor's Committee on Government Efficiency. Commissioner Christian Ramirez, Chair. The Committee on Special Efficiencies in Government is charged with identifying issues that impact residents and stakeholders while also studying and proposing more efficient methods of organizational reform. Recommendations from this committee will be forwarded to the respective governing boards and/or administrators for consideration. Number 6, Mayor's Committee on Business and Economic Development. Commissioner Harold Johnson, Chair. The work of this committee shall serve as a support to that business to businesses that, in accordance with the purpose of and intent of the county comprehensive plan, they are seeking to locate, grow, and prosper within our community by streamlining processes, curtailing bureaucracy, and facilitating responsible and equitable redevelopment. That the hope is that the equitable opportunity can be realized through Wyandotte County. Number 7, Mayor's Committee on Community Health and Recreation. Commissioners Melissa Bynum and Commissioner Gayle Townsend will both co-chair. In addition to assessing community needs regarding health, parks and recreation are also key to health and well-being. We also strive to ensure that all people have access to these spaces, programs, and services that remain essential to community vitality and serve as a key factor in advancing health equity, improving individual and community level health outcomes, and enhancing quality of life. Key to this committee is to ensure that our youth and our seniors have access to health and recreation services critical to their quality of life needs. Residents interested in serving should express their interest to the respective UG commissioner.
Do any members of the commission have any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'd just like to say that these committees have been set up, and it's a call for action to basically look at some of the issues that have been outlined from various segments of our community. It's designed to improve service, streamline processes, and basically provide better governance to you, the people of Wyandotte County. These ordinances aren't just about having listening tours or mere conversations. They're designed to bring about real policy changes, ordinance changes, and funding considerations for your Unified Government Commission moving forward. And so I want to thank all those community people that have shown interest, all those community people that are currently involved, as well as every commissioner that has shown basically the will to chair these committees and also be a part of these committees to hopefully bring about a better quality of life and governance to the residents of Wyandotte County. So thank you so much. Item number 3, proclamation proclaiming January 17th, 2022 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Committee Day.
Thank you, Mayor. Proclamation, whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. devoted his life to advancing equal opportunity, social justice, and opportunity for all, and challenged all Americans to participate in the never-ending work of building a more perfect union. And whereas Dr. King's teachings can continue to guide and inspire us in addressing challenges and inequities within our local community. And whereas serving on the King holiday is an appropriate way to honor Dr. King, meet local needs, bring our citizens together, and strengthen our communities and nation. Whereas the King Day of Service is the only federal holiday commemorated as a national day of service and offers an opportunity for Americans to give back to their communities on the holiday and make an ongoing commitment to service throughout the year. And whereas each of us can and must contribute to making our communities better with increased opportunity for all citizens. And whereas as a collective, the Martin Luther King Jr. Day Committee reaffirms the commitment of the community to advance the values and principles of Dr. King's work through service, collaboration, and kindness. Now, therefore, I, Tyrone Garner, Mayor, CEO of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County in Kansas City, Kansas, do hereby proclaim January 17th, 2022 as Martin Luther King Jr. Committee Day.
Thank you. Item number 4, proclamation proclaiming January 2022 as Stalking Awareness Month.
Thank you again, Mayor. Proclamation, whereas under the law of all 50 states, the U.S. territories, the District of Columbia, and federal government, stalking is a crime. And whereas 6 to 7.5 million people are stalked in a 1-year period in the United States, and the majority of victims are stalked by someone they know. And whereas 3 in 4 women killed by an intimate partner have been stalked by that intimate partner And whereas many stalking victims lose time from work and experience serious psychological distress and lost productivity at a much higher rate than the general population. And whereas one stalking incident was reported every 13 hours, 54 minutes in Kansas in 2020. And where the Della Gill Joyce H. Williams Center for Domestic Violence Survivors and Their Children, a program of Friends of Yates, provides 24/7, 365 free and confidential services to victims of stalking in Kansas City, Kansas. And whereas this violence is inconsistent with the values of our community and will not be excused or tolerated. Now, therefore, I, Tyrone Garner, Mayor, CEO of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County in Kansas City, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2022 as Stalking Awareness Month.
Thank you. That takes us to the regular consent agenda. Does any member of the commission or county administrator wish to set aside any item on the regular consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all items on the regular consent agenda will be voted on by one vote. I will entertain a motion for approval of the regular consent agenda.
Commissioner Ramirez, move to approve all items as submitted.
Bynum, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Stites.
Aye.
Davis.
Before I cast my vote, I just want to be clear, is the home field project a part of this as well?
It is not.
Okay. All right. My apologies. Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrough.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Okay, thank you. The next, we have one item under the standing committee agenda. Item number 1, resolution amendment to assignment and assumption and development agreement for Homefield. This item was first tracked from a special standing committee meeting on January 25th, chaired by Commissioner Burrough. I'll ask Commissioner Burrough to make some remarks in regards to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. One, I'd really like to thank the committee for joining us Tuesday night and the participants that chose from the public to listen. And Mayor, I truly believe that this contract, having been sent back, is a much better development project for Wyandotte County. I'm really pleased to see that we, as staff and commissioners and developers, were able to collectively work together to bring forward the proposal you will hear tonight. Mayor, it passed out of committee unanimously.
Thank you. Does any member of the commission have any comments or questions?
Moving them forward.
Commissioner Davis, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Commissioner Davis, District 8. When I looked at the agenda, and even the one that was updated, it did not have the changes that we made in my motion. And my motion was to change that part of 718 and some of the language there. So could staff just advise? I just want to make sure that that is included before we vote.
Commissioner, when it comes to items that advance from the standing committee, when it's advanced and it's going to be a blue sheet item, those items go into the agenda packet. We sent them out on Monday evening. So that packet contained the items in which they were originally presented on that day. But there is an opportunity for the motion to be made this evening with those considerations.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Catherine Carter.
Thank you. Staff is able and willing to provide a presentation if that's desired. And also to Commissioner Davis's question, we would anticipate, assuming that it does not get changed, it would be in the execution copy, and we do mention that in the presentation that we can provide if desired.
If you would, can you go ahead and provide that presentation, Ms. Catherine? Are you there?
Okay. Yep. Great. I'm going to share my screen momentarily. All right. If everyone can see that. So as Mayor Garner mentioned, this is an amendment to the assignment and assumption of the development agreement and the assignment and assumption agreement for the Homefield project. This was previously seen by this committee and commission back in November of 2020. I'm going to go through very briefly just some kind of hit some highlights of some history and what the goals were, and then Rob Heineman from Homefield will give a brief overview, and then finally Todd LaSala from Stinson, our outside counsel, will kind of go into some of the deal points, and then we open it up for questions. Can go into as great a detail or kind of leave it at that if that is desired. So just some quick history and background. Of course, this was the location of the Schlitterbahn project. That's where the Starbahn district first was created for that back in 2005. There are 6 different project areas. These are the same project areas that are in place today. That is why this is an amended agreement. So we are actually amending the original Starbahn district and project area agreements. Importantly, as you will see as we kind of go through some of these specific deal points, the bonds that were issued in 2015, Series A and Series B, are important. Particularly Series B, I want to draw your attention to, as those have a UG annual appropriation pledge. That means that any shortfall that does not, any sales tax that does not make up what that debt service is, the UG will have to make up that difference. This is significant in that because Schlitterbahn has been closed, these bonds are, in trouble, so to speak. So there's a lot of things that we've done, and I'll get into that in a second, to ensure that these bonds are in a much better place, and in some cases completely paid off. So that's, I think, a really huge benefit to this as we move forward. Obviously, Schlitterbahn was closed, and then back in over a year ago, sorry about that, the Homefield group actually purchased the property. And then, as I mentioned, back in November of 2020, the UG entered into the original development agreement that we are now amending tonight. The 3 primary objectives for the Homefield project really were, first of all, to remove Schlitterbahn and kind of the related problems, that had become a blighted area, and really want to focus that it's the Schlitterbahn area, but it's also the other area that the Henry family owned. So it's over 200 acres in total, so quite significant. So it's more than just that immediate Schlitterbahn area. Then, as I mentioned before, the 2015 Star bonds, making sure that we're in a position to pay those off. So we'll get into this in the greater detail, but that 2015 B bonds that have the annual appropriation, we will be in a position to completely retire those and completely pay those off, which is, as you can imagine, a really big deal. That means we will not have any annual payment coming from the general fund for those. And then finally, because this is a star bond area, it is incredibly important that we have a new attraction. The point of a star bond area is to bring people in, from outside of the region. And we are, we feel really good about the prospects of what Homefields will do in that respect. So a couple just quick changes that we think are really beneficial that have changed from the November 2020 version that was previously approved to today. We think the project has only gotten better. The one big change really is the increase of the overall STAR bond request. So it was a $130 million request that was actually broken into 2 tranches. The first, a relatively small tranche, which was about $70 million that would be privately placed. That has changed. Now the request is $150 million, with that first tranche being $130 million. That would be a public placement. This is really significant because that means that we'll be getting a lot more faster, earlier. So more of the project will get done quicker, and that means that we'll be getting more sales tax faster. We'll get that attraction, get those benefits for the residents of Wyandotte County sooner. Then two other items that were kind of referenced in the original documents, but have really grown and kind of taken a life of their own. The baseball component as well as the resort hotel component. The baseball component in the first agreement was five baseball fields. Now it is far more significant. There's a partnership with Perfect Game that also includes guaranteed hotel room nights. Guaranteed hotel room nights. That's very important, especially when you get to that next item, which is an $85 million Margaritaville hotel and resort. This would be the first full-service hotel in Wyandotte County. This went from kind of referenced as a potential piece of the development to now this is a required piece of the development. Again, a big deal. So this is now something that that would be required for Homefield if they wanted to obtain additional bond financing. I am going to now turn it over to Rob Heineman to just briefly go over the project, and then we'll finish up with Todd LaSala.
Thanks, Catherine. You did a great job. Actually, you did all the work there. Appreciate everybody's time tonight. It's an honor to speak with all of you again. I do have my business partners on the phone tonight. Greg Madej, Trey Bowen, Richard Napper are all on, so we're more than happy to answer any questions you have. We couldn't be more tickled about this site and what's happened with it. So we've purchased about 400 acres worth of ground out here over the course of the last 3 years. We've worked diligently with staff from both the unified government and the state of Kansas. And I think we've got a great project. I mean, we thought originally this was going to be really just a home field catalyzed project where we would have kind of a home field building, call it 150,000 square foot building, multi-sport. And we thought that was really, going to hopefully be something that we thought over time could develop a large development for us. And we've been pleasantly surprised by the fact that we've had a lot more traction than that over the course of the last couple of years. So, south of the Menard site is Camping World. Camping World is the largest RV dealership I believe in the world. I know they are in the United States. And that site should do somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million worth of sales on an annual basis in this area. So we're tickled to death about that. Up to the north is a Fairfield Inn on Parallel Parkway that is under construction today. That should be open, I would guess, here and probably call it the next 12 months. If you go to kind of the southeast corner of the project, the Millhouse development there in purple is a 270 unit Class A apartment development that's under construction. It's vertical today. So those three projects in conjunction with the land that's been purchased out there, there's about $100 million worth of private investment that's underway. And so we're very happy about that. If you look at, kind of to the east, where you've got the home field development there in yellow and the Perfect Game development also in yellow, two big catalysts that we think will drive somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple million visitors a year to this site. That's another $100 million worth of development that is in planning. We would hope that both those are under construction in the spring of this year. So that's really positive for us. And then, what's been talked about here quite a lot, kind of the newcomer to the party, which we never thought was going to be something that would happen this early, is Margaritaville. And it's outlined in this site as she's showing right there. It's kind of home field outdoor and the resort. And Margaritaville, if you just do a Google search at all, you'll see it's one of the hottest kind of concepts in the United States right now, with kind of resorts and destination locations in hotspots like, Nashville, Times Square, Orlando. And so we're really thrilled that we're able to bring one of these to Kansas City, Kansas as kind of the first full service resort in this area. we're going to start with somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 rooms. We're hopeful that because of everything that we have going out here over time, that it's something that can grow. But that's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million project in and of itself. Hopefully, if we get through kind of planning efficiently and design, that should be under construction in the fall of this year and opening probably in the spring of 24. So, all in all, sort of everything that we kind of have going is about $400 million, I think, in total project costs. We still have other land out there. And the great thing is every day we get a new call, whether it's medical office, whether it's, kind of fast food, whether it's incremental car dealerships. So, we feel like for us, this is really kind of a 20-year project that we think in our hopes and vision is, someday the largest tourist attraction in the state of Kansas is how we feel about it. And that's kind of the impetus for home field. I mean, home field really for us was get kind of the youth and amateur sports space in this country. It's the largest kind of sports category in the country. It's larger and growing faster than any of the professional sports in this country. And, it's a $20 billion industry today, growing to probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $60 billion in the next 5 years. And candidly, COVID's done nothing but probably enhance that potential based on the fact that, all of us as parents spend a lot of time and money on our kids and their sports, and will continue to probably prioritize and even maybe more so prioritize those trips that we take with our kids to go to these tournaments. So really our thought in building this amateur sports resort out in Wyandotte County is, how do we get people from whether it's, Oklahoma City, Des Moines, Northwest Arkansas to come into Kansas City, park their car on Tuesday in a parking lot and, not really leave again until Sunday and spend money in all the different attractions that we all cumulatively have built out here in, the Village West and East over the course of the last 20 years and really optimize that visit. So we're very excited about that. As I mentioned, we started with home field. We were lucky enough to have build a partnership with the Perfect Game company. Perfect Game is the premier baseball tournament operator in this country. What we're showing here right here is their major complex out here, which is 8 fields. And then we'll build another 2 fields for them, which are kind of the championship fields over by the home field building. And, we believe that will have upwards of, 250 to 300 teams a week from, what we thought to be was probably sort of Memorial Day to Labor Day. But I believe based on more discussions we've had, it's probably even some of those shoulder seasons, the spring and fall as well. So our commitment with them is that they'll produce 75,000 room nights a year. I think we have the opportunity to generate more than that. All those room nights will be booked and will flow through home field and kind of our, kind of booking, operations. And the way that flows is first to the Starbond development, second to the Village West and East District, third to kind of Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County broadly. And then, anything that's left over goes to kind of the state of Kansas. So we'll make sure that we don't have any of these kind of sneaking over into Missouri or into downtown Kansas City or anything crazy like that. So we're thrilled about this. We couldn't be more happy with kind of the progress that's been made, everything that's happening out here. The Margaritaville is something that we never thought was going to happen as quickly as it has. So I think just the concept of coming to this area and spending, like I said, 4 or 5 nights and making it a real primary kind of tourist destination is, in the process of becoming a reality. And it couldn't have happened without the hard work of staff on both the unified government side and the state. We've had great collaboration with a number of members of the commission around, how do we make this project as positive as it can be for everybody involved. And so I think we're thrilled to get to this point. I will tell you, it hasn't been, the fastest process in the world. And a lot of that is the onus is on us. We probably, could have been a bit quicker than we have been. But, I think the fact that we're here today and we've got all the things lined up that we have lined up, the financing is in place to go make this happen. So I think we're thrilled to, kind of get your approvals tonight, hopefully, and, finalize some things with the state. And, we would hope that this destination is open and vibrant and really going gangbusters in middle to the end of 2023. And I'm happy to answer any questions anybody may have about the project. And I know a lot of you have spoken to me and members of my team on a lot of the different aspects, but if there's anything that we can answer tonight, we're more than happy to do it.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'm Todd LaSala. I have the privilege of being your outside counsel on this project. Catherine has asked me to very quickly emphasize and go through the development agreement key provisions with an emphasis on things that have changed since the agreement in November of 2020. This first slide illustrates in some detail the project that Rob and Catherine are describing, along with the dollar figures associated with the various components that are contractually required by the document. You can see here that the home field building is a $60 million asset. It has moved since 2020 from the original location where it was around Schlitterbahn down to 94th and State, the corner of 94th and State. The home field outdoor project is a $15 million component that is largely designed to be integrated with the Margaritaville Hotel. It's being designed with that, and it's supposed to be collaborative and have synergy with the hotel. And then the home field baseball component is a $40 million asset. That figure has grown from 15 to $40 million, and it is now 5 fields larger than it was in November of 2020, in no small part because of the partnership that Rob and his team have made with Perfect Game. The fourth thing on this slide, the Margaritaville Hotel that Catherine described, is an $85 million asset. It's a 250-room full-service hotel and resort. And that piece of the slide is entirely financed with private dollars, largely financed with private dollars. Those other 3 components above are really what the STAR bond money in this project pay for. That $115 million you see there is most of that $130 million STAR bond issuance that Catherine is describing. And the other $15 million in that initial issuance are for infrastructure costs. Next slide, please. This slide quickly shows you the timing. The home field building and baseball are designed to open in the summer of 2024. The home field outdoor and Margaritaville project, which are being designed together, will be about a year behind that and should open in 2025. Next slide. This slide shows some detail about the STAR bonds. Catherine was describing this very well. It's $130 million in the first issuance, but this new agreement would grow by about $20 million for a total of $150 million of STAR bonds. Again, 2 issuances, 130 in the first issuance, 20 million in the second. That changed a little bit from the November agreement, which was originally 75 million in the first issuance and 55 for the balance. Another change that Catherine May, I believe mentioned, was this is now contemplated to be a public sale of STAR bonds versus a private placement, which is what we had in 2020. Let's go to the next one. Enormously important point that I'll slow down for here. The 2015 B bonds that Catherine mentioned at the beginning that were issued in connection with Schlitterbahn, that $12 million bond series was backed by the UG by a general appropriation pledge. So the UG is responsible for any shortfalls on those bonds. One of our primary objectives here has always been to make sure that those bonds are taken out of the equation and that the UG doesn't have to come out of the general fund to back those bonds. A great thing and a change in this agreement is that the first dollars out of this STAR bond issue will go to repay those 2015 B bonds in full, and you will no longer have that liability or general appropriation pledge. It disappears entirely with this project, enormously important for us. This slide also shows the public-private ratios for this project. Very important to the UG that there's more private money coming into this project than public incentive money. And so those concepts are hardwired into this document. In our first $130 million bond issue, the developer has to demonstrate it's 40% public dollars, 60% private dollars. So if we issue $130 million of bonds, the developer's got to show $195 million of private investment. Some of that would be the Margaritaville Hotel, it's dollars for Camping World and other things, but we maintain these ratios throughout the project. When you get to the second issuance, it's a 30-70 ratio, 30% public, 70% private. And so the ultimate result here is that as you issue these bonds, you get $195 million of private money invested in the first issuance and 46.8 for the second. Next slide, please. I'll only hit this very quickly. There are pages and pages and pages of conditions in this document about what it takes to issue these bonds. So you have pages about what it takes to issue the bonds in the first place, and then additional conditions about drawing those bonds. Our objectives here, of course, are about making sure that if we issue the bonds, these projects actually happen and get built. So among other things, one of the conditions is that if we do the $130 million, we're never going to do any more than that. We won't ever do this second issuance of $20 million unless and until the developer has completed, opened, and fully delivered all three components of the Homefield project, plus the Margaritaville Hotel. Next slide, please. There are three other public incentives or incentives that are worth mentioning on this project. The first is community improvement districts or CIDs. Some of you may remember that we had a CID in place for Schlitterbahn. You took the step of terminating that, and that CID is now gone. This development agreement contemplates that the developer can come back to you for one or more CIDs within this district over time. Each of those would come back to the commission separately. There would be terms and conditions related to those about what the money would be used for, what the caps would be, and so forth. They are telegraphing in advance that they expect a standalone discrete CID for the Margaritaville Hotel that would be a 2% CID for those that stay at the hotel, and they would be requesting that that be bonded. The other CIDs that may happen within this district, it's contemplated that they would be pay-as-you-go community improvement district financing. A second incentive that is also on the table and contemplated by the agreement is industrial revenue bond financing. These are what I would characterize as certainty IRBs, where they really serve two purposes. One, it would give the developer the opportunity to abate the sales tax on construction materials and labor as they build the project. And the other is really a hardwired agreement about what the property taxes will be over a 10-year period. So rather than a percentage abatement, we've really talked about and thought about what the assets values would be, and specific pilot payments in lieu of tax are required for each of the components of Homefield. Two of those components we've agreed on now for both baseball and the Homefield building. And we've agreed that we will, as it's designed and developed more fully, we'll also specifically agree on a pilot payment for the Homefield outdoor part of the equation. And then finally, the UG land. The UG has approximately 70 acres of land within this district that we've always contemplated conveying to the developer. This does represent a change because in the November 2020 agreement, we contemplated that the developer would pay $3 million for that 70 acres. In the new agreement, we don't have that payment. And you may ask yourself why. That seems like a bad deal for us. But it's very important for us to remember that in the November 2020 agreement, when they were paying that $3 million, it was never coming to the UG's general fund. That money was pledged to pay off the 2015 B bonds where we had the annual appropriation. In other words, we had $11 million of bonds outstanding that were supported or UG backed and that we had guaranteed. And we were buying down that debt by $3 million to go from $11 million to $8 million. So again, never coming directly to us, always going to pay off those bonds. In the new agreement, that debt is going to be fully retired day one. So we are no longer asking the developer to pay that $3 million that was going to pay that debt. Instead, we're conveying this ground to them essentially for free. Next slide, please. Let's go to the next one. This is the donation concept that Commissioner Davis was asking about. So let me generally describe what this is, and then I'll specifically show you the change. In the Schlitterbahn development agreement, once upon a time, some of the commissioners will remember that Schlitterbahn had agreed to make donation payments for foundations or nonprofits, and that money combined with the casino money could be carved up and devoted to good causes within the community. Over time, Schlitterbahn quit paying that money as they became more troubled. The developer in its November agreement said that when they went to acquire that land from Schlitterbahn, they would make Schlitterbahn pay the amounts that were in arrears that they hadn't paid to us. And they did. They did go get that. I believe it was $375,000 for us. And that money did wind up flowing through the commission to good causes and foundations. This developer is not planning to make donations that same way. Rather, this developer has committed to make investments in our community in the downtown and historically urban areas of KCK. In the November 2020 agreement, the number was $3.75 million of investments the developer would make within the community within a 3-year period. That number has grown to $3.35 million, and it's really been scaled proportionately as the star bond request has grown. Next slide, please. I'm sorry there's a lot of words here, but this shows you the entire provision. And we thought it was important because the committee on Tuesday night had robust discussion about this clause. The donations that we're talking about in the prior version of the agreement and the version that went to committee had the county administrator approving the investments, and the committee felt very strongly that those investments should be approved by the full commission. So the language and the change that you see here is the change that Commissioner Davis was talking about, and the committee approved and advanced this document to the commission tonight with this change in mind. So we thought we'd show you that specifically. And final slide, please. This is the minority-owned business, women-owned business, and local business participation goals for the project. Here you have both construction and professional services goals that are consistent with what we normally do. And many of the commissioners usually ask us about whether these requirements have teeth or not. The remedy, if the developer fails to use best efforts to comply and hit these goals, is pretty significant in this case. It's a 4% reduction in the available star bond proceeds. And when you're talking about $150 million, that's a lot of money. So, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'll stop there. We're happy to answer any questions, but that's a high-level overview of our development agreement.
Thank you. Ms. Carter, do you have follow-up remarks?
The only thing I would add is that we have been working with the state, the Secretary of Commerce, as well, or the Department of Commerce, as well as Lieutenant Governor Toland on this every step of the way. The state is an integral part of all star bond projects, and so they have reviewed this document and are comfortable with it and kind of blessed it moving forward. So we appreciate the work that they've done, as well as Commissioner Burrough on all state side of things. So that's all I've got.
Thank you. We'll circle back. Do any of the commissioners have any comments or questions?
Commissioner Stites.
Commissioner Stites, District 7. And Todd, if you wouldn't mind, would you explain to the public, as they may not be well-versed on the LBE, MBE, what that actually means? We can see those acronyms and the percentage, but what does that actually mean to our community? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. It's a great question. What this means is that the developer is agreeing as they build their project to use best efforts to use locally owned businesses to build parts of the project, minority-owned businesses, and women-owned businesses. And the UG sets specific goals for participation in the project. So in this case, specifically, when it comes to construction of the project, they're going to go out and they're going to make sure that 18% of the contractors and subcontractors working on this project are locally owned businesses. The UG has always felt that's important. 15% have to be minority-owned businesses and 7% women-owned businesses. When it comes to professional services, that includes lawyers and architects and engineers and design firms. We similarly have goals in those three categories as well. And the UG has a very detailed, very thoughtful, strategic exhibit that we attach to these development agreements about what we think that means. What do you have to do in order to make sure you're using best efforts? And the UG has always been very helpful to its development partners about, all right, this is how you collaborate with us to make sure you meet people in our community so that you can hire locally and make sure that you have local contractors on your project.
Thank you. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Townsend, District 1. Commissioner Stites' question was a good segue into the one I want to follow up on. With what frequency in the project will there be a check on how close we're coming to, or the developer is achieving the WMBE rates?
Yeah, it's a great question, Commissioner. The answer to your question is every single construction draw along the way. Each time our agreement requires that each time they come in and request money, they want to draw on those bond funds, they have to report exactly where they are in terms of these goals. So we look at it every single time they ask for money throughout the project.
So at that time, heaven forbid that it is below the agreed upon percentage, how does that affect the draw? Is that when the penalty would go into effect?
The penalty goes into effect at the end, but Commissioner, we have a holdback. Let me make sure I get to this so I'm specific with you about it. Throughout, as we get toward the end of the project and we become concerned they might not ultimately get there, I know that we hold back the last part of the money to make sure that we never wind up dispersing more than the penalty would be. We have a holdback at the end to make sure that we're never upside down relative to this requirement. It's important to it.
Okay. It was just the way that I saw it tonight, as opposed to a couple of days ago. There was so much good information and new information. So I wanted to make sure I asked that question. Thank you.
Catherine, did you have a follow-up for Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you very much. Yeah, quick follow-up. We do work with Sharon Reed, the Director of Procurement, on all of these goals throughout. So there is, as Todd mentioned, we have these, constant checks. If the developer is having, we do this on every project, so not just this one, but if the developer is having issues getting, to a certain percentage on one, we work with them to help them target. We can do a request and help them send out information and get, connected with more businesses. And so we try to be active participants and encouraging and assisting in ensuring that they hit those goals throughout the process.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I know we talked about this on Tuesday. So one of the things that I did not see in the slide, which would be very, very beneficial for our community, and quite honestly, the local media has not reported on, could someone go over the pilot schedule, and then could someone go over the community benefits, right? We hear all the time in our community with bills like this, right? That we're giving away everything and Wyandotte County's for sale, this is not the case at all. There are a considerable amount of community benefits as well as the $4.35 million. Can someone please go over that so folks know? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. I know we really appreciate the question. Let me start with the question about the pilot agreement. As I mentioned, Exhibit 18 identifies the payments in lieu of tax that the developer would pay for both the home field building and the baseball component, where we have an agreement that we're gonna get together when they finish design to add provisions here about the home field outdoor component. On the home field building, in year one, the pilot payment would be $241,253, and it incrementally increases over a 10-year period so that the final payment is $263,855. When it comes to baseball, the original pilot payment is $106,703. It also incrementally grows over time to $116,000, essentially $700 at the end of year 10. So those are the payment in lieu of tax benefits that we previously agreed to on those two components, and we will reach a similar agreement on the third component of home field. For the rest of the project, as we discussed on Tuesday, it's contemplated that it will pay regular property taxes without abatement. So the Star Bond vehicle is a sales tax.
Can you repeat that one more time? Just one more time.
You bet.
Property taxes part.
You bet. For the rest of the project, it is contemplated that they will pay property taxes. These vehicles are sales tax vehicles. The incentives are sales tax based. We keep the property taxes. So, Commissioner, you've also asked a very good question about community benefits. What do we get in addition to this project? The developer has made agreements about community benefit. It's in addition to saying that they're going to have their headquarters here in Wyandotte County, they have also agreed to provide discounts to citizens in the community for admission to the home field building, home field outdoor, and portions of the baseball components. I know Rob can speak to this in some detail. He's proud of what they've agreed to about making sure there's a local team in these tournaments. He has also agreed that he's going to work with our local school districts about an agreement to have students from USD 202, 303, 204, and 500 having access to those facilities in non-peak times for their events and their training sessions. They also provide 500 tickets annually to the UG's Parks and Recs Department for free admission to home field outdoor. So there are a series of benefits in addition to the project itself, the hotel room nights, and the other benefits we've been talking about.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner, let me just throw it out there too. So we talked about this the other night. First, let me just say what a strong set of sweater shirt combo game you have going tonight. I really kind of like that. But anyway, I think there's a ton of things that we can do for the community that aren't going to be in this document. Meaning, if you as commissioners bring forth to us, hey, we'd like to do this for the community or the school district around the water park, around home field, we're going to be more than open to talking about that, because we're highly incentivized to make sure that we're providing opportunities for every kid in Wyandotte County, the opportunity to be the best athlete they can be through what we provide at home field. So, like I said the other night, there are things that we're able to do in documents when we don't really know how this all shakes out at the start. But what really is going to be more vibrant are the programs or the projects that you all bring forward to us that we work on together to make sure that this is as good as it can be for the community.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Catherine and Todd and Rob, for bringing this project before us. I remember when we just started thinking about the project and Catherine bringing it forward to us. So I'm very excited that it's that it's here and that more is coming and more is being added to it. I think this is a good project, an amazing project for our community. I have a couple questions, and both Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Townsend kind of touched on my two questions. The first one is about the pilot payment. I believe I have asked this before, Catherine, but I do not remember the answer you gave me. Is where do those pilot payments go? After we receive them from the project, where do they go? Do they go to the general fund, a special fund? I believe I've asked it, but I want to make sure.
Yeah, that's a great question. Pilot stands for payment in lieu of taxes. It is treated just like it would have been a property tax payment. So it will go to the general fund.
Okay, that's what I figured, but I just wanted to make sure. And then my second couple questions are pertaining to the MBE, LBE, WBE goals. And then Commissioner Townsend asked how often they were, but how are they reported to us? Are they reported into a document, or how is that reported back to us or to the UG?
Yeah, generally we have there's kind of a format that's really as simple as an Excel spreadsheet that shows really every single organization, business that they have contacted, each bid. So all of these, all the subcontracts, that's all bid out. And so we see, where, who bid, who was awarded, do those fall under a L, M, or W, BE, and kind of have a tracking, whether it's monthly or, that's something we kind of work out, to have that tracking that shows exactly what that percentage is for each one with the kind of backup materials.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to make a request, and I'm going to leave it to legal to decide if we can make this request or not as a commission. Request that economic development and interim administrator share those MLBE reports with the commission. That's never been done in the past. We have all of these economic development agreements and all these projects and all of these goals, but we as a commission never know if those goals have been met. And so, especially with this project and maybe future projects going forward, if any of those goals could be shared with the commission so that we know what is what's happening and making sure there's that accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. This question is more or less for, I think, Catherine and staff, as related to the question from Commissioner Davis with regards to the pilot. Are those payments the same type of payments that we see on our BPU bill, or are they different in some way? Can you kind of walk us through that, Ms. Carter?
I would be happy to. They are similar in that they are both a payment in lieu of taxes, but they are completely different in terms of the goals, what their, kind of who pays them, what their purpose is. So you have the BPU, what you see on your BPU bill every month, that is specific to the UG, and I would defer to someone else to explain exactly where that money goes. This would be, this is really how we do a industrial revenue bond. So the way that the industrial revenue bond works is that the property is given 100% property tax abatement, so that that is just how it functions, because they're getting basically our tax exemption. They get to utilize that because we don't, as Todd explained, we don't want to provide a 100% tax abatement. These are supposed to provide certainty. So we are actually determining kind of what that property tax payment would be so that we can provide the developer with some certainty, provide the unified government with some certainty, so we know exactly what those payments are going to be for the next 10 years. And then that is what we call a pilot or a payment in lieu of taxes. So because they are not being assessed normal property taxes, we have in Exhibit 18, you can see the entire schedule and you will know exactly what they would be paying, again, in lieu of taxes, but it is effectively, what their tax payment would be.
Right. I guess I'm wondering out loud, and this is really to staff, to mayor, to and legal. I'm wondering if we maybe can name that payment something different, in that, I think it gives the average homeowner a different thought as to what it is versus its true, I guess, its true outcome. I don't know. It's just something I've been curious about for years. And since we're in a time of asking questions, I'm just wondering out loud if there is a better way to describe that payment in lieu of taxes versus the ones that the average consumer sees. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm going to ask our legal advisor to weigh in on that, or someone from the administrator's office.
Mr. Mayor, I think I can take this. Statutorily, it is a payment in lieu of taxes. If it's helpful and provides clarity, I think in our documents, we could call it something different. We could define it differently in the development agreement if we thought it provided greater clarity to the citizens. I think that's possible. I think we just have to be careful because under the statute, they are payments in lieu of taxes. And I think importantly, we've got to be clear that it, as Catherine said earlier, it behaves in the same way as a normal property tax payment. And I would want us to be careful about doing this in a way that we weren't suggesting otherwise.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
I'm going to ask our chief legal counsel to weigh in on that as well.
Misty Brown, Chief Counsel. I would agree with what Mr. Lasala said. We could certainly carefully do something to indicate in the agreements that it's not the pilot that folks are seeing on the BPU. We just need to very carefully craft it. I do think it causes confusion, like as Commissioner Johnson expressed. I just wanted to be very mindful of how we're doing it.
Thank you. Commissioner Kane.
Well, I was 100% for the project, but I didn't hear a lot about local owned business that work with local unions. That's issue number one. And the most frustrating one is we're going to take care of School District 202, 204, and School District 500. What about School District 203? Are we not good enough?
Hold on, Commissioner. Bear with me. I want to make sure that I didn't misspeak. I hope I didn't.
Said 202 and 204.
I'm going to get my hands right on it here and make sure that I get this right. (202), 303, 204, and 500.
Where is 303?
Probably 203.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that's a typo. It is 203. My mistake. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Well, we are considered the pearl sometimes, and you misspeaking and saying 303 and not saying 203 because we're just as important as the rest of the school districts, and just as important as any other district that's out there.
Yeah, I apologize, Commissioner. My mistake.
Thank you, Commissioner Kane. Was that any of your comments?
No, I didn't hear anything about local unions, local businesses that have unions.
Commissioner, is that a question for Mr. Heineman?
That's a question for anybody who wants to answer the question.
Commissioner Stites, I mean, obviously as we've
My
done.
name's Commissioner Kane, not Commissioner Stites.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, my bad. Commissioner Kane, as we've done in the past with the projects that we've been involved with in Wyandotte County, obviously we will absolutely unequivocally work with the unions. I'm relatively certain that the other projects that we've been involved with have been, if not 100% union, nearly 100% union.
Most of them had, yes, sir.
Yeah. So, and that's our expectation, and that's our commitment. That's what we intend on doing on this project. It's the right thing to do. It's what we want to do. We want to be a good community advocate, a good community partner. So that's exactly what we intend to do, is continue doing what we've done in the past. I apologize for calling you Commissioner Stites. Commissioner Kane, I appreciate your comments as always.
Well, and here's
Commissioner
the thing.
Stites, I apologize to you as well. So
you apologize to me first. But here's the important thing. You guys have done that in the past. That was not said tonight. And for the rest of you commissioners, these have done very good with local-owned business, women-owned business, the whole shooting match. We have worked with these people in the past. They've done a really good job. I know they're going to do a good job. Just point of clarification, I want to make sure my district's taken care of just like everyone else's.
Absolutely. And Richard Knapper's on the call here tonight too. And, we obviously have a bunch of construction underway today. And I know that's all union construction that's happening today as well. I don't know, Richard, if you want to comment on that at all.
He doesn't have to comment. I believe you guys.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions from our commissioners? Commissioner Stites.
Commissioner Stites, District 7, and I take no offense to being called Mr. Kane there. I do have a little bit more hair. But here's what I'll say. And I appreciate the clarification on 203. It was important to me when I spoke about at the subcommittee meeting that we included 204, Bonner Springs, Edwardsville, and to make sure that this project is inclusive of all of Wyandotte County. And Todd, I understand the oversight there at 303, but I've been extremely pleased with the transparency from all of our staff, everybody that has put in the time to make sure that this is clear, that it's understood, that it is a clear benefit to our community. I mean, when we think about it, and we have a defunct water park that grew up in weeds, looks terrible, theft, crimes that were occurring out there, and now we have a investment group that stepped up to make this type of investment into our community. And then you turn around on top of the amazing project that they're committed $4.35 million to projects inside of Northeast and the rest of our community. I'm very excited about it. I look forward to it, and I can't wait to be the one to make the motion to approve. Thank you guys again.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
I'll be brief, Mayor, because I know you have questions and others may as well. I just wanted to say this. At some point, if it's possible for staff to send me and maybe others a list of organizations, businesses that are currently on pilot schedules and what they're paying, I think that would be great. I think the opportunity before this commission could be to really and truly take the benefits of the revenue that's generated out west and put it out east and other really distressed census tracts in Wyandotte County. That's really going to be up to us to make sure that the money flows from West Wyandotte out to the rest of Wyandotte County, especially to the areas that are in need. We can be very strategic about that. I just want to make sure that was said, and perhaps we can take that idea and expand it so that everyone in Wyandotte County feels the impact of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any more commissioners? I'd just like to say I'm excited about this project as well, but I'd like a little more clarity, not just for myself, but for the public. And I got two questions, and hopefully you can answer them in a way that will at least bring some level of comfort. The first one is the amount of money that has been set aside that the commissioners will have the ability to delve out to the rest of the community, particularly the areas east, downtown. I think the clarity needs to be made what that amount is. Is that a one-time payment, or is that an ongoing annual every 3 years? Can you be clear about that for the public?
Todd, do you want to take that? You want me?
I think we're talking about the development investments, Rob. So I think that's
Yeah.
I think that's for you.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to. Mayor, I mean, what we've agreed to, and I think the exact dollar figure, Todd, is what, 4.375?
4.35.
Sorry, 4.35. And Mayor, that's a one-time investment. It's not an annual investment, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in one project. It could be in multiple projects. And I think what we've expressed to the commission is, we would like this to be a collaboration where we have projects brought forth to us by the commission, by commissioners, for us to consider. And because obviously we're going to have sponsorship around those projects, because we're most likely going to have other processes that are going to, fall in line associated with just us picking something, whether it's planning, zoning, maybe other incentives that might be involved in it, everything associated with the project. So while we do have 3 years to go make these investments, time is of the essence, because none of this happens quickly. If you look at this project, this is probably, 3 to 4 years in the making. So obviously that's something that we'll work in earnest on. We want to collaborate with you and your commission, and try to make these projects that are catalysts for the community. We don't want this to just be something that's sort of a standalone thing. Obviously if it's synergistic to our core business, which as you're well aware is sports and hospitality related, that would be attractive to us. But we have looked at a number of things downtown around, various housing projects and things. And so I think it's really just the onus is on all of us to make sure that we unearth as many opportunities as possible and figure out what works best and what we all agree, especially now based on the fact that we're going to have to agree to it on sort of a majority of all of us here on this Zoom. Let's make sure these are projects that are great for the community.
Thank you. So a little more clarity. These aren't grants. These are business investments that also adds value to you as well as an investor. So there would be a return on that investment for you as well, as opposed to just a grant where you're investing in the community and the community receives 100% of those proceeds. Is that correct?
That's how it is designated today. And again, like I said, I mean, we'll have to take a look at each of those projects as they're brought forward. And, to the extent that they provide, again, like synergy to our business, maybe the return thresholds would be, lower, or, it's not like this is something that we're just trying to say that we have to hit a home run on every deal we do. We want to make sure these are quality projects that we all think are good for the community. We do intend on these being for-profit projects. But, having said that, we're open to looking at, everything that's brought to us and take it under serious consideration.
Well, one thing I hope you would take into serious consideration beyond the for-profit projects that will be at some point invested in collaboration with our commissioners is what other developers have done, have taken it upon themselves to see the need in Wyandotte County when you talk about youth program, the lack of affordable housing, seniors, recreational programs, and consider, or at least give some level of commitment moving forward that you will see that need and make investments in Wyandotte County as being a good neighbor as your profit allows, like a lot of other developers have done, and not just in a one-time investment that benefits you, but maybe an annual investment that has more of an advantage to the distress levels of people within our community, be it homelessness, poverty, in those areas that we can look at, and hopefully we can have that conversation as a commission with you and see how that can be something that just moving beyond entertain, but actually something that can become a reality for Wyandotte County. Because when we have these big investments, we want to make sure that these investments really add value to all of Wyandotte County, and not just the eastern portion. When you talk about Bonner Springs and Edwardsville, they are also players in our community. And we just want to make sure that long-term, beyond the initial investment that really benefits you as well, that there is also investments that you're willing to make that can be of broad value to Wyandotte County. And so the next question I have is basically, you talked about a tourist destination, and I think Mr. LaSala talked about that. Just for a little more information, what brings you to that conclusion when you talk about jobs, what that looks like? And when you talk about jobs, are you going to attract a workforce-ready partnership with folks right here in Wyandotte County? What does that look like when you talk about jobs? And then just that vision of saying that this could be an enhanced tourist destination right here in Wyandotte County. Can you share what that vision looks like and what led you to that conclusion?
Absolutely. And thank you for the question. And, you know, Mayor, one thing that I do want to point out is, you know, obviously not directly this company, Homefield, but obviously Mr. Madej and I that are on the line tonight are investors and owners in Sporting Kansas City. And we have collaborated with Wyandotte County to do a number of, you know, futsal courts throughout the community. We did those in collaboration such that we did one in every district in the community to make sure that we were trying to do something to reengage the community and provide programming for kids. So yeah, we're definitely going to be open to looking at projects or programs that benefit the community that don't always have to provide a profit motive. So that's number one. You know, when we looked at this site initially, what was attractive to us was the access to the site, the visibility of the site, obviously at the crossroads right there at 435 and 70, the proximity of, you know, the Kansas City metropolitan area in the center of the United States. And when we look at the industry of youth amateur athletics, it being a $20 billion industry growing to $50 billion, sports tourism to us is a tremendous opportunity. And with some of those elements that I mentioned, whether it's, you know, access or, you know, just the centrality of our location, we think that if we build a vibrant resort, which has, you know, the sorts of assets that we're providing here through the Star Bonds with, you know, the hospitality assets like a Margaritaville is going to provide, and obviously the $1 billion of investments that have been made out here in this area over the course of the last 20 years, whether it's the Speedway, Children's Mercy Park, obviously Nebraska Furniture Mart, the Legends. I mean, I don't know how this isn't going to be a magnet for us to attract some of the finest tournaments and events in the country. And through that, we feel like, you know, if you just look at the partnership that we've generated with the Perfect Game Company, the premier kind of baseball operator here in the country, they've pledged 75,000 room nights a year. That is an enormous amount of hotel room nights. And candidly, if they do what they think they're going to do, we'll blow through that number. So, you know, our aspirations as you know, 4 individuals, when you take myself, Mr. Madej, and the Bowen family into account, are people that have been in Kansas City for years and years and years. And our aspiration is to make Kansas City the best youth sports destination in the United States. You know, when we got involved in Sporting Kansas City, we were probably one of the most meek, underperforming professional franchises in the entire United States. And we took it as a challenge to, why can't this be the best Major League Soccer city in the United States? And candidly, I think that's what we are today. So that's the same sort of motivation. That's the same vision that we go into this project with, where this needs to be the best youth sports destination in the United States. I think we've got the location to do it. I think we have the land to do it. I think we've got the civic will to do it. So we're excited about this opportunity on what it can be. The great thing about the way the Star Bonds work, and Star Bonds, as we all know, are a highly controversial thing, is the mandate that's presented to us is it's not only about sort of the destinations that you build, but it's also about the private spend that you build. And what we're able to do out here because of the great land that we're utilizing is we have all sorts of different tenants that we're working with, whether it's, additional car dealers, whether it's great hoteliers, whether it's medical office providers. And all those are jobs. And, when you're talking about a medical office, and we have a medical office under a letter of intent right now, which would be somewhere in the neighborhood of a $30 to $40 million building, which would probably have 100 to 200 jobs that I don't know what the average salary of those will be, but those are nurses and doctors. So those are going to be high paying jobs. Camping World, which is one of our tenants, is the largest, RV dealer in the country. And their salespersons make upwards of $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year based on the number of RVs they sell. So these are not just low paying jobs. These are high paying jobs that are going to be on destination out here. And then when you look at something like a Margaritaville, when a Margaritaville is open and going on, July 10th, there's probably 500 or 600 people working there. And those aren't all, $200,000 jobs. Obviously, some of those are lower wage jobs. But there's going to be plenty of opportunities out in this 400 acres that we're creating to probably do, I don't know what the number is, but it's probably 2,000 to 3,000 jobs when everything's up and going the way it goes. And so that's going to provide tremendous opportunities for local people to work out there. And we obviously will have every impetus to try to hire as many local people as we can. And I'm sure we'll work with you and your staff to make sure that we have all the processes in place to give those that are local kind of a first right to work out there. So, I can't tell you how excited we are about this location. I mean, this started us that it was a place that we wanted to build basically a gym. We wanted to build a home field gym and let kids come out here and play sports. But as we worked with it and talked with, your staff and the state staff, it's turned into something a lot different than that. And so, we have $100 million worth of projects underway today. We've got another 100 million in planning. We've got another probably 100 to 200 million on the chalkboard. And this is something that I think will be the largest, tourist destination in the state of Kansas within 4 to 5 years. And I think that's something that we're all going to be really proud of. So it's not easy. It hasn't been easy. The process getting to where we are tonight hasn't been easy, but we're here, and man, we have a lot of momentum. So I think it's going to be something that we're all going to be really proud of. And it's going to be a bunch of work, like I said, but we'll get through it. And I hope it's something that you can be really proud of when you can say that you're kind of the guy that watched over it as it all happened.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
Davis, District 8, motion to approve.
Commissioner Burrough at large, second.
Okay, I got a motion to approve and a second. So roll call.
Roll call. Stites.
Yes.
Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrough.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes the portion of our regular meeting, and I join us in that capacity. I'll call us back to order as the Land Bank Board of Trustees. Does any member of the commission or county administrator wish to set aside any item on the Land Bank consent agenda?
Commissioner Mike
McKiernan.
Kane, move for approval.
McKiernan, second.
Okay. Seeing no motion to set aside, there is a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Stites.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrough.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes our meeting for tonight. We are adjourned. Thank you.